This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Democracy Now!'s Renee Feltz in this Democracy Now! Exclusive hour. Albert Woodfox speaking out in a television radio broadcast for the first time since his release from a parish jail in New Orleans on Friday, met by his brother, the longest-standing solitary confinement prisoner in the United States. Albert was served for 43 years in solitary. We are also joined by Robert King. Robert King is another member of what became known as the Angola Three: Albert Woodfox, Robert King, and Herman Wallace. Robert King spent 29 years in solitary confinement for a murder he did not commit. Billy Southern is also with us, one of the trial attorneys representing Albert Woodfox. Robert King, you have traveled the country, the world, trying to have the other members of the Angola Three, Herman Wallace, who died in 2013, a few days after he was released from Angola, died of cancer, and Albert Woodfox freed, telling their stories. Can you talk about what it means for you to have Albert free?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Of course, I can tell you, for us, for me personally, I think it was joyous. The jubilation in which, you know, that Albert may not have felt, the crowd felt that we were overjoyed. Not that he wasn't. The clouds that perhaps, you know, the clouds that were over him probably prevented the jubilation from being present. But it was there, and the crowd showed it. So it was a good thing for the crowd. It was a good thing for me personally. I think it was a victory for justice, finally being rendered, if you want to call it justice. Justice delayed, of course, they say it's justice denied, but nevertheless, it happened. And so I was overjoyed that it had, quote, finally happened, because we had been here so many times and disappointed and let down. So, but it was a joyous occasion, and Albert is here now, and he's acclimating himself to his environment, his new environment.
Thank you, King. Now, I want to go back to 1972 and this original charge that Herman Wallace and Albert Woodfox faced, that they murdered a prison guard, Brent Miller. A key witness in the case against them was a man named Hezekiah Brown, who said he witnessed the murder of Brent Miller. But his credibility was later called into question. I want to go to a clip from the documentary In the Land of the Free, where we hear from a lawyer who represented the Angola Three and who describes Hezekiah Brown. Now, after this, you're going to hear from the narrator of the film, Samuel L. Jackson, actor. This first, though, is Nick Trentacosta.
Hezekiah first told the investigators at the prison that he was nowhere around. He didn't know anything about the murder. A few days later, he's dragged from his bed at midnight, put under the bright lights of interrogation, and told, if you help us crack the case, we will get you your freedom. At that point, he said, it was Wallace and Woodfox.
And local author Ann Butler's research recordings provided evidence of just how pliable Hezekiah Brown could be.
Well, at the trial, they called Hezekiah Brown, you know, and he said that he saw Woodfox and 3 other black men.
Yeah, but Hezekiah was one you could put words in his mouth.
That last voice was Hilton Butler, a former warden at Angola prison, talking about Hezekiah Brown, a key witness in the state's case against Albert Woodfox and Herman Wallace. Albert Woodfox, can you talk about the allegations against you and who is and who was Hezekiah Brown?
Yes, you know, at the time, myself and Herman Wallace was very active in the prison population, trying to organize resistance to some of the corruption that was going on, the brutalities, guys being murdered almost every day or brutally beaten. And so we think that when Officer Miller was killed, we automatically became public enemy #1 as far as the security staff and the administration at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And it was, although it was a shock, it was not a surprise. I was the first one of the A3 to be locked up in the dungeon for the Brent Miller killing. And the next day I was moved to CCR, and where I remained until my freedom on my birthday, February 19th.
I mean, you were released on your birthday, February 19th.
Yes, quite a birthday gift.
Well, on Friday, as you were released, Louisiana State Attorney General Jeff Landry said in a statement he thanked the family of Brent Miller and that, quote, their support has been instrumental in today's very difficult decision. Miller's sister, Wanda Callender, told the Advocate newspaper she felt the plea deal, quote, was slammed in our face. But Brent Miller's widow has long said she did not believe that prisoners Albert Woodfox and Herman Wallace killed her husband. She released a statement last June saying, quote, I think it's time the state stop acting like there's any evidence that Albert Woodfox killed Brent. After a lot of years looking at the evidence and soul-searching and praying, I realized I could no longer just believe what I was told to believe by a state that did not take care of Brent when he was working at Angola and did not take care of me when he was killed, unquote. So I want to go to a clip of Teenie Rogers, who was just 17 when her husband, Brent Miller, was stabbed to death in 1972. She was interviewed in the 2010 documentary In the Land of the Free.
I've been living this for 36 years. There's not a year that goes by that I don't have to relive this. And it just keeps going and going. And then these men, I mean, if they did not do this, and I believe that they didn't, they have been living a nightmare for 36 years.
That was Teenie Rogers, who is also called Teenie Verrett. Your response, Albert Woodfox, when you hear Officer Miller's wife saying that she did not believe that you were guilty, the reason you were put in solitary confinement and held there for more than 4 decades?
Well, you know, I was, you know, I guess, for lack of a better word, I was shocked when, you know, I learned that she had taken the position that after looking at the evidence and, you know, just, I guess it just never felt right to her that we were a part of whoever killed her husband. And I think it was very brave on her part to publicly state that.
Now, Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry issued a statement about the state's plea agreement with you, saying, quote, after carefully considering all of the facts and circumstances surrounding this case and its procedural history as it stands today, our team of prosecutors believes this plea is in the best interests of justice. Landry was recently elected to replace the former Louisiana Attorney General, Buddy Caldwell, who'd successfully appealed to prevent Albert Woodfox's release last year after a federal judge ordered him freed. Another key figure no longer active here is longtime Angola warden Burl Cain, who said he would keep Woodfox in lockdown regardless of his crimes since, quote, I still know that he's still trying to practice Black Pantherism, unquote. Cain resigned last year after he came under investigation for violating prison policy by entering into real estate deals with family members of Angola prisoners. I'm wondering if you can talk about the role of Burl Cain and Buddy Caldwell in the Angola 3 case and these latest developments, Albert.
Well, obviously, Burl Cain and Buddy Caldwell made this case personal, so personal to the point where they totally disregard the Constitution, statutory law, due process, lack of evidence, and just decided that, you know, I was guilty, Herman was guilty, and they would do everything they could to keep us in jail until we both died. Unfortunately, they almost succeeded, but as tragic as it was to lose Herman, he died a free man.
Now, Albert, can you clarify, please, this no contest plea that you entered on Friday? Talk about, you know, we've come to this point after more than 4 decades where you were able to come to this agreement with the state after maintaining your innocence this entire time. Now you have a no contest plea, but not everyone understands what that means and maybe why you did that. So can you explain that for us?
Well, the plea nolo contendere, it's a plea. For me, it was a plea for my freedom, not a plea of guilt. And I had to factor in the fact, you know, my age, I had some serious health issues, and I wasn't getting the proper treatment for these issues. I wanted to get back to my family. And, you know, my lawyers, my attorneys, they worked so hard to make this a reality. So when this opportunity came up, as distasteful as it was, it gave me the opportunity to reunite with my family and my, and, you know, just.
Well, let me ask.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Billy Southern, your lawyer, about the significance of Buddy Caldwell finally in Louisiana. He was defeated. And Jeff Landry, the new Attorney General, coming into office. Billy Southern, you're one of the trial attorneys who represented Albert Woodfox, one of the Angola 3. Talk about what that change of Attorney General meant, and also what prison warden Cain being forced out meant.
Attorney General Caldwell, the former Attorney General, had such a deep misconceptions about Albert and this case. He referred fairly recently to Mr. Woodfox as one of the most dangerous men on the planet. So this is someone whose appraisal of this case has never made any sense. He also committed to refusing to test a bloody fingerprint that was found at the crime scene that was never matched to anybody, that specifically did not match Albert, did not match his co-defendants, did not match anyone that had been tested against. But they had the fingerprints of all of the inmates at Angola on that day in 1972 and steadfastly refused to compare that fingerprint against other inmates, which, of course, could have identified the real killer. Buddy Caldwell's words on that were, well, we won't be fooled by those fingerprints. So this is someone who had such misconceptions about this case that really any sober-minded person replacing him and making an honest assessment of the case was going to come to it without all of his biases and prejudice and come to different conclusions. And we really believe that that's part of what happened, is that a more reasonable assessment was made about the case, a more reasonable assessment was made about Albert, because frankly, no one could have been more unreasonable than Buddy Caldwell.
And Burl Cain, the significance of the warden and the conditions that Albert Woodfox and Herman Wallace, and before that as well, Robert King, were held in.
Obviously, for 43 years, for 46 years, Albert has been incarcerated there at Angola, and he has struggled, and Robert has struggled, and others have struggled to improve things. And it's a testament to these men that they essentially outlasted some of the very, in many ways, mean-spirited people who were very dedicated to seeing that their circumstances never changed. So advocating on their own behalf, developing followers all around the world. Albert, Robert, others have been able to outlast in a very improbable way even figures like Burl Cain and Buddy Caldwell, who seem so entrenched here.
And what nolo contendere means as a lawyer, explain. You have Albert Woodfox, who has served 45 years in prison, 43 of those years in solitary confinement. What it means now to plead no contest, nolo contendere, to manslaughter and aggravated, what was it, burglary?
Aggravated burglary. Yeah, so essentially what it means is that Albert gets freed. And the legal proposition is essentially that that Albert can maintain his innocence, and he has maintained his innocence as he has consistently for 43 years, but that it's an acknowledgement that that there is evidence that could support a conviction. And of course, Albert has been wrongfully convicted 2 times by an array of witnesses who lied to secure his conviction. We litigated everything incredibly strenuously in this case, and we were very dedicated to make sure that the injustice that had previously occurred in Albert's case twice with 2 convictions did not repeat itself. And we litigated issues like excluding the prior witness testimony of Hezekiah Brown, other witnesses, and they wanted to just bring in these transcripts of these witnesses. But in fact, these witnesses had lied, and in fact, the government had suppressed evidence that would have allowed Albert to impeach these witnesses at their earlier trials. And you will not be surprised to find out that notwithstanding very aggressive and competent litigation on that point by myself and Robert McDuff, Albert's other trial attorney, we lost those issues at the trial court just recently. We appealed those, and it was our intention to appeal those all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court. But we lost that appeal on those issues to in the First Circuit Court of Appeals. So those testimonies were coming in. And I've been practicing in Louisiana long enough to know that I need to make a realistic assessment of the courts here, and that the injustices that have previously occurred in Albert's case, we could not be guaranteed that those would not occur again, because this is a West Feliciana Parish jury in the heart of Louisiana. We litigated, for instance, that the venue needed to be changed because, of course, Albert could not get a fair trial in a community where he is infamous and where there's prison guards and associates of the prison in almost every home. We did a 43-year survey of the incredibly damning media portrayal of Albert, and we lost that motion. So the trial was going to be back in West Feliciana Parish. This bogus testimony was going to come back in. And in addition to all of that, we have Albert's health problems, and we have his long struggle, and he had an opportunity for freedom. And that was absolutely the choice that we advised him to take, because for us, Albert's, the incredible things that he's done in prison will only be greater now that he's out, and he deserved the opportunity to be out, and he deserved the opportunity not to have to trust a Louisiana jury to make the right choice in this case when they've done the wrong thing 2 previous times.
We're going to break, then come back to this discussion, and I want to ask Albert Woodfox what it was like, chained and shackled, to see Herman Wallace for the last time when you got to say goodbye to him, along with Robert King, the 3 of you together for a final time as Herman lay dying in the prison, but a judge demanding of the prison warden that Herman Wallace be freed. or else the warden would go to jail. We're talking to Albert Woodfox, the longest-standing solitary confinement prisoner in the United States, Billy Southern, his attorney, and Robert King, also a member of the Angola Three, who spent 29 years in solitary confinement. The